Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Splintering Ice. This will be Part 4, Chapter 4, entitled Scrambling. 3 weeks before. Why is it, Shota drawl's eyes narrowed, that I wasn't even surprised when I got the call from Recovery Girl that you were here? The curtains of the infirmary are drawn halfway, streaming in the glow of the afternoon sun across the lap of the sole occupant. In the corner, Shota can see a tuxedo blazer folded and hung over the visitor's chair, yellow in color and most definitely All Might's. It's past his class period, so the man is probably visiting the kids since he has nowhere else to go. Them and their little connection, whatever that might be. Midoriya at least has enough decency to look embarrassed, eyes downcast and a faint blush painting his cheeks. There are bandages wrapped around his ankle. His foot sat upon a pillow at the end of the bed. There's a red cinch on his right shoulder that has been left exposed to the cooled air of the infirmary. Shota eyes that for only a moment before forcing his gaze away. He sighs, crossing his arms, and leans against the nearest wall. What happened this time? Midoriya's fingers pick at the sheets beneath him, still avoiding Shota's gaze. I got distracted. Shota stares wordlessly. He can feel Midoriya grow more nervous as the seconds tick by in silence. Todoroki didn't mean to. I need to talk to him when I get out of here. Midoriya, if at all possible, seems to shrink down more than before. He looks so upset after he accidentally burned me. I've never seen him look at me that way before, like he was going to cry or something. I don't know, it was my plan after all. He was just doing what I told him, but I stepped wrong and got in his path of fire. That's all. Shota grimaces. If that's all, then what were you distracted by? Midoriya jolts as if electrocuted. His eyes finally glance up to Shota, a confused quirk to his eyebrow. What? You said you were distracted, Shota repeats, drumming his fingers against his upper arm. You are many things, problem child, but someone who loses focus is not one of them. Midoriya looks away again, and Shota has to inhale steadily to prevent himself from snapping at the kid for being nervous for no reason. He understands that he's intimidating, or so he's heard. Hisashi has told him plenty of times, of both his students and students from other programs at UA describing him as such. But seriously, the kid was acting as if Shota was still willing to expel him or something. Shit. You're not in trouble, Midoriya, Shota says quietly, forcing his voice to sound as unperturbed as possible. He isn't quite sure he succeeds, but it's as close as he can get at the moment. I just need to know for future exercises. It's important. Midoriya nods stiffly. I know. After another moment of silence, Midoriya wrenches his gaze up to meet Shota's eyes. I saw Asui slip from the wall she was climbing on. Her and Tokiyami were our opponents, but I don't know. I guess I was just worried she'd fall. Shota stares at him for a long, confused moment. Her quirk allows her to literally stick to walls, you realize. Midoriya's face turns thunderous, and it's enough of a rare occurrence for Shota's eyebrows to shoot up, arms falling to his sides. I do realize that. That's why I can't really explain it. I got distracted for no reason, tripped over a concrete slab, and made Todoroki burn me by getting in his way. I get that I messed up and... Midoriya. The kid flinches, shoulders shooting up and a soft blush gradually painting his cheeks as he slowly realizes that he's just snapped at his teacher. Oh, Mr. Aizawa, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I know, Shota says. You're fine. Relax. Midoriya doesn't seem convinced, once again turning his gaze away to stare down at his twiddling hands. Listen, Shota continues. You are overly considerate, to the point of being concerned for people that are capable of taking care of themselves. Asui is a strong student, plenty capable of taking care of herself in a situation like the one you were concerned about. But... Shota sighs, already regretting his words because the kid's face has crumpled in the past few seconds since Shota has begun speaking. It's admirable that you're so focused on other people's well-beings, even if not completely rational. Midoriya looks startled, surprise shining in the gaze now locked on Shota from the white bed. If Hisashi hears about this, he knows he won't hear the end of it for, well, eternity. I can already tell, just by all the trouble you've gotten into since arriving at this school, that you probably won't cease with this reckless selflessness anytime soon, so I'll make you a deal. Midoriya looks confused, one of his hands gripping the bed sheets once again. A deal? Yes. Shota says, a small smirk painting his features. Last 1 month. Only a single month, without getting into trouble. No wounds by your own making, meaning no broken arms or legs or whatever. And no going against the rules of UA for your own ethical reasons. Nothing. Past his bitten lip, Midoriya mumbles out a quiet, And? And I'll sign that notebook you've been pestering me about, The kid had brought it into the classroom a few months before, saying that he collects hero signatures and all that. Strange for someone who plans on working with a lot of the heroes he admires so thoroughly. Shota had seen him writing in the notebook before. Sketches of heroes he recognized and heroes he didn't recognize. Paragraphs written of each. Kind of creepy, he thinks. A bit, but also a bit impressive in regards to Midoriya's observation skills. So, not particularly being a fan of the spotlight, Shota hadn't been too thrilled to find out he had a section written about him. He'd shot Midoriya down again and again since then, ignoring each new method of persuasion the kid brought along. One of which was even the brilliant idea of bringing Hizashi in after hours to lecture him on the importance of appeasing fans. Shota kindly reminded him that he literally lived with Midoriya now, in the same building, saw him every day, etc., etc. Nothing worked. The kid eventually moved on. Yet now, Midoriya's features brighten exponentially, his teeth releasing, his gnawed lip, and a smile that surely had the potential of blinding Shota exploding across his face. No way! Really, Sensei? Shota sighs. Really, really. Midoriya laughs, a guffaw type of sound that pushes from his chest like he released a giant weight from his shoulders. Deal. I won't let you down, Mr. Aizawa. Shota turns to leave with a lazy sigh. I'm sure you won't, kid. Now, don't give the old lady too much grief, all right? Okay. See you later. Midoriya, come on. Shota's voice comes out in a wispy huff. Stay with me. Almost there. Almost there. He wraps his arm further around Midoriya's hip, adjusting his grip on the kid's opposite forearm, and hefts him closer to himself. Midoriya lets him, putty in his hands practically, doing whatever Shota asks, shakily moving whatever Shota needs him to move. No questions. It makes Shota feel like screaming. They've been making decent progress. Midoriya pushes forward, feet moving one after the other. He sags into Shota's side, letting the older man take the majority of his weight without comment. It's telling for Shota, the kid being so willing to be helped, just knowing how unbothersome he prefers to be, though Shota would never consider this instance to be bothersome at all. We're gonna make it, Shota says, glancing around the area with a squint to fight off the billowing snow. You're gonna be fine, okay? Midoriya. It's a choppy grunt through gritted teeth, but it's enough. It'll have to be enough. He hasn't gotten the kid to say much. I'm sure All Might's already got a fire going, so it'll be nice and warm, okay? Shota continues, just trying to keep the kid's mind occupied on something other than the biting chill surrounding them on all sides, or the swaying of the trees in the wind, the spray of ice in their faces. At some point, he had pulled Midoriya's sodden mask up and over his face, fussing with the strange ears to keep them behind his head, forming a full hood, hoping to provide some form of cover against the wind. It may not be much better, being soaked and almost frozen, but it's enough. Can you talk to me, please, A loud, hacking cough from the kid cut Shota's plea off, sends the older man spiraling as he tries to get a decent look at Midoriya's face. He doesn't see much, just the pale as can be bottom half of his chin, upper face covered in green and no visible eyes, probably clamped closed. He's nuzzled his face into Shota's side, thankfully a relatively dry patch of cloth. A few more shakes of his shoulders implies some more hidden coughs into Shota's clothing. Shota cringes, continuing to push them forward. Much further. Midoriya manages to whisper loud enough for Shota to hear him over the howling wind. Strange wheezes follow every other word. How much for... I'm thinking 2 more miles, kid. Only 2. We can manage that, right? Midoriya hums. The hand he has wrapped in the back of Shota's uniform loosens, and it's the only clue Shota has to prepare before Midoriya's knees give out. He luckily has a good hold on him, predicting this before they had even started walking. He squeezes the kid's waist, squishing him to Shota's side, and falls to the ground alongside Midoriya. He's examining Midoriya within a moment's time, his free hand releasing Midoriya's arm and feeling for his neck and face anywhere that might bring some sort of reaction. Come on, Midoriya. Midoriya. He lightly slaps the side of his face, watching the eyelids twitch but refuse to open. Izuku Midoriya. Please open your eyes, kid. It's a fight, he can tell. eyes rolling under closed lids and edged to the brows above, and then they're wrenched open, a full-body reaction where he flails his usable arm and gasps a few miserable breaths. "You with me?" Shota pats his cheek one last time, and green irises clouded over with pain and delirium and confusion slide to look at him. "We have to get back up, Midoriya." There's something that erupts from his mouth that's split between a sob and a wet cough, but regardless, the kid nods and allows himself to be pulled from the ground. If the kid had fallen through the ice when the medics were still available to do anything at this facility, then Midoriya would probably already be getting seen by a doctor at a hospital, piled with blankets and hot water bottles and warm IV fluids, and whatever else they do. Stitched up, arm casted, perfectly fine, give or take the need for bed rest. But they don't have that type of luck, it seems, because that's not how it's going. Midoriya lets out a couple of wet, terrible coughs into Shota's side. Shota cringes, an angry and loathing glint in his eyes. Instead, he's forcing this miserable kid who's severely hypothermic and hurt to walk in order to stay as coherent and conscious as possible to safety, where he's going to get half-assed first aid by people who know the basics. In truth, Shota doesn't even know for certain what supplies there are in the facility. A first aid kit, definitely. But will they have a change of clothes, blankets, like a ton of warm blankets, because the image of Midoriya buried under tens of fluffy blankets is one thought that has Shota fighting forward. Hell, Shota isn't even positive that the facility has plumbing, in case they eventually have to put Midoriya into a warm bath or something once he's been stabilized. You weren't even supposed to do that, but if the worst comes to worse. Another cough, this one sending Midoriya keeling halfway over, grappling onto Shota's clothing desperately as he stumbles. Shota keeps his hold, trying to pull Midoriya forward on their path, knowing that the sooner they get to All Might, the better their odds. Midoriya follows for a few more steps before keeling over once again with another mouthful of coughs. Zawa. Another wet cough. I can't breathe. Midoriya. He can't what? He gets his answer in the next moment when Midoriya collapses to his knees, Shota's attempts at keeping him upright, flat out failing. Midoriya coughs a few more times, trying to lift his broken arm to cover his own mouth to no avail, possibly due to Shota's own interference. But then the kid inhales, a horrendous wheeze that sends Shota's eyes going wide. Breathe. He can't breathe. Is he panicking? More wheezing as Shota kneels further down to look at Midoriya's face. Calm down, Midoriya. Inhale with me, okay? No response. Shota grabs Midoriya's unharmed hand, pressing it to his own chest. Inhale. Midoriya tries. Shota can tell, but another pained wheeze is all that comes. It's chopping, something popping in the kid's chest as he does so. No, not panicking. He never dealt with it before personally. Usually medical personnel at hospitals were the ones to deal with it, but Midoriya didn't have the luxury of being at a hospital right now. This was secondary drowning. Water in the lungs that wasn't dispelled. Inflammation of the lungs. Impending pneumonia. Shit. Midoriya continues to hack as Shota turns his attention away, examining the landscape. Anywhere, literally anywhere, just for a minute or two to have reprieve from the wind and the ice. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to... There. A small alcove, beneath a pair of trees. Roots forming in a small enclosed space that has probably been the home of rabbits or foxes or whatever the hell lives on top of mountains. Midoriya, come on. Shota presses his hand to the back of Midoriya's hip to pull him up, but is found watching as the added pressure to his side sends Midoriya's eyes rolling back and his body lolling sideways into the snow as he continues to gasp for breaths that just won't come. Shota's body moves on its own, scooping Midoriya up under his back and knees and plowing through the snow towards the alcove. He has to get down on his knees, careful not to whack Midoriya's head on the frozen roots framing the entryway. He sets the kid down on the ground, squeezing in sideways and sitting right inside the entrance. Barely enough room. No room for stretching his legs out, definitely. Midoriya, listen to me. By this point, it doesn't look like Midoriya can really listen to anyone. His fingers on both hands are grappling at everything they can get a hold of. His unwounded arm pulling at his hero uniform right above his chest as if that would relieve whatever pressure he feels. Shota only has one idea, but he isn't quite sure he wants to use it. Not when it's this cold. Putting ice-cold metal on skin is just asking for trouble, but... Zawa! Midoriya's mouth shoots wide open, staying gaped as he sucks in rapid, shallow breaths. Damn it all. Shota rumbles, reaching toward his student, He has never seen Midoriya actually use his respirator, though he has heard about it how he used it in one of his off-campus excursions with Mirko, apparently. Something about poison. Regardless, that means it does actually work. Not just for show, like most aspects of hero costumes seem to be. "I'm going to put your respirator on you, Midoriya," Shota warns, watching as the kid's arm flops down to his side, clawing at the snow instead of his own chest. "Don't fight it, okay?" No response. Of course there's no response, just a desperate croak accompanied by green-glazed irises gazing up at his pleadingly. "Hang on," Shota murmurs gently, the sound of his voice foreign to his own ears. "Just hang on." The hand scrabbling desperately for purchase in the snow suddenly shoots up and grasps at Shota's sleeves. Shota halts for only a moment, quickly scooping the kid's hand into his own, yanking the respirator around Midoriya's neck up. He positions it and presses it to Midoriya's face. Midoriya inhales sharply, a strange gurgling sound that clears away after a few seconds. There you go," Shota whispers, eyes locked onto Midoriya's own clouded over ones, wide open and shocked. "There you go. Just breathe, kiddo. Just breathe." It's ice cold, burning against his fingertips, and most definitely even worse for Midoriya, at least he thinks. Midoriya doesn't even flinch at the unbearable cold metal pressing against his face. It sends a shock of fear racing down Shota's spine when he realizes that Midoriya probably can't even feel the thing, too numb to the cold. What the kid does do, however, is continue to inhale deeply and desperately, back arching out of the snow, his hand and fingers jerking in Shota's grasp. His boots scrape against the frozen dirt, revealed in the small dwelling they have found. It's a full-body reaction. Shota gently settles his other hand on top of the respirator, keeping it in place, leaning forward so he can press his forearm against Midoriya's shoulder, to keep him laying flat. He's still gasping for breath. He's laying in the snow, clothes practically frozen solid, and his own body closely following. Frost scribbled across his skin, and making his eyelashes and hair white, so cold he isn't even shivering anymore, so cold he can't even bleed anymore, with an arm strapped to his chest because he shattered the damn thing again. And all Shota can do for him is strap his own freezing respirator to his face so he doesn't suffocate and hold his hand, watching the digits slowly fade to purple. Shota's wearing gloves, but they're soaked from diving into the water, knees deep, to drag Midoriya to shore. If he had been patient and dragged the kid to shore with the capture weapon, then his gloves would be dry and would currently be around Midoriya's hands instead. If he had... Fuck that. No. It's good he didn't drag him out by his arm. It was already broken enough. Either way, there was going to be a problem. An accident. It was all an accident. Brought on by a villain, granted, but an accident nonetheless for the two of them. No way in hell he would have been able to wait patiently in that situation. His rationality be damned. Shota peels his gloves off vigorously, bowing his body over Midoriya's to prevent whatever wind was managing to snake its way into the small burrow from going toward the kid. He takes both of his hands, even the one shattered and bruised and bloodied, fingers scrunching up and hanging limply in the makeshift cast. Midoriya's fogged eyes track Shota's movements as his teacher scoops both hands up into his own bigger ones and just holds them for a moment, breathing through his hands and trying to get some warmth back into the ice-cold flesh. Shota has the sudden and hilarious, for some reason, discovery that his phone is no longer on him. In the lake? Crushed in the snow somewhere. He doesn't know, but he realizes he hadn't even thought to check. Whether that's because he subconsciously recognized the absent weight in his pocket or was simply too preoccupied to consider phoning someone now of all times, he doesn't know. It's enough for him to huff a breath and bow his head even further down. He finds himself lost in thought for a moment then, playing through their situation and mapping out how to get to All Might's outpost from here. They must have already walked 1.5 miles at least. Definitely not more than 2. It was 3 to get to All Might, so to get there, it'll probably take them another half hour at least, unless the two of them suddenly get a big burst of adrenaline somehow. After that, he'll have All Might warm Midoriya up somehow. Blankets, probably the fireplace each outpost had, etc., etc. He'll call Hizashi, check on his students. Bakugo seemed to have a concussion, and Asui was no doubt having issues too. She couldn't handle the cold. The few other injuries his students had could easily be taken care of, even without medical help from the outside. They need to call emergency personnel too, assuming Mike didn't already do that, and... Midoriya's fingers jerk in his hand. Shota turns his face up to catch Midoriya's gaze again, to make sure he's all right, or as all right as he can be. He's still gasping for air. Shota can feel the rise and fall of his chest through their connected hands, so close to the kid's torso. The gasps are fainter, though, quieter. That doesn't seem right to Shota. Midoriya's eyes are slipping closed. Shota almost misses it, the way Midoriya physically fights to keep his eyelids open, snapping them open every time they close, but he's losing. It's obvious he's losing. Midoriya, stay awake for me, Shota calls, releasing their joined hands and taking the kid's face into his hands instead. We're about to go out again, and then it'll only be a few minutes, all right? Midoriya.
Sen...
He coughs painfully, the sound echoing in the metal of the mask.
I'm cold. Tired.
His eyes fall closed again, forcefully being wrenched open a second later, despite the ice crystals forcing his eyelashes to stick together, with a pained huff of breath. Shota, very suddenly, does something he hasn't done in years. He panics. Midoriya doesn't even flinch when Shota shoves his arms under his back and knees, lifting the kid as he forces himself up to his feet. He's charging through the snow before his brain can even catch up with his actions. The only thing flooding his senses and his thoughts is the desperate need to prevent the life in his arms from flickering away. Midoriya's head lolls limply over his arm, the small sounds of his gas echoing inside at the metal of the respirator. He isn't even thinking, doesn't find himself pondering much of anything other than the way his feet slosh through the snow one step at a time, or of the weight now laying limply in his arms, somewhat stiffened by the cold. Damn it. Why is it always this kid who has to go through shit like this? There's a small cough under the respirator. It causes a strange metallic echo, but regardless, it seems less intense than the ones earlier. At least they have something. A bit of a victory for a short moment.
Zawa, Sen...
Another wet cough splitters under the respirator.
What's wrong?
What? Shota breathes out heavily, trudging as quickly as he can through the snow.
Angry.
Ah. I'm not angry, problem child. Don't worry. Midoriya's eyes shutter closed again. Shota jerks his shoulder, causing the kid's head to bob and his eyelashes to flicker open once more.
Gah. What's wrong?
Shota cringes at the kid's repetition, clearly still confused. It will probably keep getting worse. Shota shouldn't expect anything else. Keep talking to me.
About what?
Anything, Shota says, stopping in his tracks to attempt to properly navigate. He believes he's still going in the right direction, so he hefts Midoriya up higher in his arms and continues forward. Take your pick, kid. I know you've been dying to ask me questions about my hero work. Shota cringes at his word choice a moment later, waiting for the kid to respond. Midoriya hums, his half-lidded eyes staring up at Shota's face. Snow is now sprinkled on the dark green mask, and Shota gets the sudden violent urge to try and brush it all off. From the mask, the hair, the eyelashes, everything.
Why don't you like All Might?
Because he's an attention grub who ignores rationality in favor of emotional constitutions. Next question. Shota can see the barest hint of a smile in Midoriya's eyes, can practically picture his blue lips under the mask smirking up at him.
"'Kay, what?"
Shota trips, landing roughly on his knees, and almost drops Midoriya, having to use one of his arms to leverage himself upward. Midoriya grunts, but does little else, completely limp in Shota's grasp as he grapples him back into his arms, rising back to his feet with a huff. He keeps running. Midoriya doesn't speak. Keep going. Midoriya hums.
What's underground work like?
Shota sighs, thinking about his answer for only a short moment. Not as grandiose as normal heroics that are in the spotlight, but it has its perks. No media, practically.
What are the downsides?
Shota really doesn't want to talk about this while the child is growing colder by the minute in his arms. It's not as pretty, either. I've had nightmares about the things I've seen, plenty of times. Midoriya hums.
Dead people.
Shota cringes, thousands of memories of lifeless eyes looking back at him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Midoriya mimics.
Zawa-sensei.
Yes. Midoriya's eyes are lifelessly gazing up at Shota, head bobbing back and forth, lolling against his shoulder. Purple has spread even further across his cheeks. He looks exhausted.
Am I dying?
Shota nearly trips again. No, you're not dying, Midoriya.
But...
You are not going to die, I promise you, okay? Midoriya sniffs, a sudden wobble to his voice as he says,
I don't want it to die. Not yet.
Midor...
I want my mom.
It's a small plea, nothing more. Frozen tears begin rolling down Midoriya's cheeks, leaving heavier frost in their tracks along the respirator and dampened spots in the already damp mask, and it about devastates Shota.
I want to see my mom.
You will. You'll see her soon, Midoriya, I promise. And he's suddenly struck by how important the thing in his arms is. In his line of work, it's best to leave emotions out of it. People die, that's how it is. And so it's best to not think too much into the people you're saving. But now, he thinks about all the people this boy loves, all the things he loves to do, and all the people who love him right back. How many different aspects of so many people's lives would be changed if he fails to get this kid some help, including his own life? He runs faster. I swear, Midoriya, you're going to be fine. Shota practically shouts over the wind, billowing past them at his pace. You're gonna get warmed up, get some pain meds, some medical help. All Might will be there. Shota knows the kid is an All Might fanboy, so that should bring him some comfort. Then we'll get you to the hospital. Your mother will be there waiting, I promise. I promise, okay? He trudges through the snow, bowing out of the way of a tree. In the distance, he thinks he may see some hint of a light, but... He looks down at Midoriya's face, tucked into his hero costume's fabric, eyes completely closed, something akin to peace riddling his features, just like earlier when he first pulled him from the lake. Midoriya. Shota keeps moving forward on instinct, but his mind is occupied, jostling the boy in his arms. His limbs and head loll aimlessly, completely senseless about the world around him. Midoriya, wake up! Shota tries again, jostling him rougher. Now! There are lights, and they get brighter and brighter as he pushes further through the billowing snow. If nothing else, he's close. He's fucking close. So this kid better not die on him now. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 4 of Splintering Ice. Chapter 5 will be up next. This one was always a chapter that really stuck out to me a lot, especially when I first read the fic. I'm eager to hear your thoughts and reactions as well, though. And as always, thank you so much for listening.